So registered dietitian Ashley Koff is here to reveal the best ways to get your antioxidants.
Here with everything you need to know is Ashley Koff. She's the contributing editor for Prevention Magazine.
Let's get right to it. What are the most important things to get right when planning your meal?
I would recommend is just picking one place to start.
Ashley, share the good news.
Yeah, we're going to make a lot of friends right now, so chocolate.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Healthy Rebels Speaks Out. I'm Bonni London, your host, and today I sat down with registered dietitian Ashley Koff, a 20-year award-winning personalized nutrition expert, author, and founder of the Better Nutrition Program. But what she is speaking about today is the real science behind the GLP-1 medications that you've all heard about, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, and how to really protect your health, whether you are on them or not. She has an upcoming book, Your Best Shot, that really could be your ultimate roadmap for anyone who is trying to really navigate this whole new world of weight loss. So, if you want to lose weight without losing your health, or you are looking to get off of these medications the smart way, this episode could be the game changer for you. So grab a pad and let's dive in. Okay, Ashley. This GLP-1 explosion has really been shaking the world. I mean, people are spending, I would say, maybe $1 billion and all of these prescriptions. Yeah. So what has this really exposed to you about traditional dieting and why they fail? And more importantly, why aren't doctors talking about this?
Yeah, well, so I think we've buried the lead when we talk about like the successes and the challenges of these GLP-1 medications. And to me, the lead message is if there is a medication that exists today that is a hormone replacement, so it is a synthetic version of a hormone that we make in our body. There is one key difference, and I'll get into that in a minute. But if there is so much success for so many people, and if there are challenges and side effects and issues for so many people, when we replace a hormone in the body, it is showing us the degree of dysfunction, or what I call suboptimal function, of these hormones in our body today. And what I'm really curious about, and this is like me and like you, like we'll geek out on this. This might not be as applicable for your readers, or for your listeners, in that part. I'm really curious about whether or not it's about the fact that the way that our bodies are designed, which I think is brilliant. And, we're this amazing ecosystem where every choice that we make has impact everywhere in the body. It's not just like the direct impact. So it's interesting to me, is modern day finally hit us with so many challenges that the way we're designed, even at optimal function, isn't going to work optimally for us moving forward. And so we need to learn how to even further optimize, or we need something adjunct there. Or is it that we really, in the work of optimization, we get to where we are, and so many of us are functioning suboptimally? So let me give some actual examples on that part. So our body makes these GLP-1 is one of what I call 4 hormones that I call them your switch. So GLP-1, GIP, PYY, CCK. Currently, there's only a dual agonist with a triple agonist coming on the market, but currently we only have medications that replace GLP-1 and GIP. But these 4, PYY and CCK, these 4 all work together to regulate things like appetite, our blood sugar regulation, bone health, muscle health, the type of fat and where fat is allocated, and even things like inflammation. So these are really important, what I'll call starter hormones. And the reason I call them a switch is by design, especially GLP-1 and GIP, they're only meant to switch on. They literally are like motion detectors. So they get signals, and the motion detector, the motion detector analogy, they get signals and they turn something else on, and then they're done. There's actually a process in the body where the body releases enzymes to break down these hormones within 2 to 4 minutes. So for some reason, the body is saying, I actually don't think you need these to be on for longer. In the actual human design, they're only designed to stay on for about 2 to 4 minutes. Enter the Gila monster. The Gila monster, which I describe as like every perimenopausal woman everywhere. The Gila monster, a prehistoric animal that's like become this modern day solution for us, but The Gila monster does not want to leave its cold, dark place. It does not want to hang out with people. It does not want to go searching for food. It is literally like, I would like to hide out. And by the way, I'm designed with a hormone that also, and with a body process that lets me eat fat from my tush. I was like, oh, to be a Gila monster, can I just eat the fat from my tush? I don't need to go grocery shopping, forget about freebasing protein. Like, I'd be great, you know? So we're not Gila monsters. However, what happened was the researchers actually figured out from a science standpoint that the Gila monster's venom has a hormone or a peptide chain that's similar to the hormone in our body. The exception is, and when they started to play with it, that they can alter this so that it stays on 24 hours a day. So all the time, not 2 to 4 minutes. The difference is between 2 to 4 minutes and 24 hours a day for like 5 to 7 days. So that's a huge difference. So it's staying on this whole time. Why is this the answer to your question? There is a world of difference when you have your body having a hormone being secreted, staying on, meeting the receptor sites, and as a result, triggering all those other actions to occur 24 hours a day for 7 days. And what we see is for many people, there is so much success with that because in 2 to 4 minutes, the job wasn't getting done. Like if they have 100 receptor sites, maybe 3 of them were getting satisfied, maybe 50 of them were getting satisfied, but not 100 of them. And so now if you have this amount going into the body that goes in and over the course of these 7 days, it's providing this satisfaction, it does dwindle, so it has a half-life. So it starts off very intense, and then it goes down. It's helping a lot of people. However, it also has side effects and true side effects. So some of the effects of the medication are just the way that it works, the way that I'm talking about it. We'll dive into side effects. So when the body is now having something turned on 24/7 instead of for 2 to 4 minutes, that does mean that certain things are happening in the body. And one of the biggest things for us to understand is it means your own hormones are being suppressed. Why would the body need to produce its own hormones and go through that whole process of sending them out if it actually has those hormone receptors are satisfied with the one that you're taking in exogenously, the one that you're taking in by way of a shot or a pill? So that's the reason doctors aren't talking about it is honestly, I think that their doctors tend to be diagnosis and solution oriented. And the historic model for doctors is when I have a diagnosis, there is a medication, and now more and more so, there's nutrition and there's lifestyle, but here's a medication that can do this. And they're so excited about what it can do, right? And weight, as a society, we've been taught to look at the total number on the scale, and we've been taught to measure BMI. And this can reduce the number on the scale. It can reduce the BMI. It can reduce your A1C. But to quote my book, chapter 2, I hope I can curse, but the shit we have to unlearn, or the asterisk T that we have to unlearn, is that that's actually not better. That's not telling us that our ecosystem is working better. So part of the problem is we have a medical system and a healthcare system that isn't right now functioning to have a conversation about what does weight health look like. Your weight, how your body is made up of fat, bone, and muscle. And where the body puts those, when it puts those, and how much it puts there is going to tell us. It's a key performance indicator of your overall health. We have a lot of work to do to change the way we look at that societally and to change the way we measure things. Like, I talked to a general in the Army, and he's like, we have a big issue. We have like almost no one coming in who's qualified, these younger people who are qualified. Because their BMI. And I'm like, why are you measuring their BMI? Do you know that 3/4 of the football fields would not be filled if we were measuring BMI and saying you have to be a certain BMI to get on the field? You got to look at muscle, you got to look at fat, you got to look at bone, right? And we would have an issue, but then we'd know how to address it, better on that part. So,
absolutely. I do have a quick question though, but talking about the GLP-1s, this apparently is a new phenomenon that we are not using it appropriately, like where everyone is overweight. That is my question. Obviously, like you said, we have this perfectly orchestrated body that has developed over a millennium. So what has happened? Which I think we know, and to me that is what people are maybe not talking about, because I think it would be wonderful, but it doesn't take away what I like what you and I talk about as dietitians, kind of the heavy lifting, right? The diet lifestyle aspect.
No pun intended with heavy lifting, but yes. So keep in mind, the hormones are made in the lining of your digestive tract. If we just started there, the amount of insult and injury and suboptimal function of the digestive tract is profound. You know, we have a population like me as a kid. I was like basically on antibiotics all the time. I had ear infections and throat infections all the time. We have people that are on acne medications. We have people that are using steroids, for autoimmune diseases. We have people that are using medications that insult or injure the lining of the digestive tract for great things. Like we have hormone therapy. We have, all sorts of things. We have alcohol. We have gluten. We have toxins and I don't believe just gluten alone is a problem for everyone, but for many people it is. But we have toxins in our environment that are disrupting. So there's so much that's happening to the lining of the digestive tract. If these cells exist in the lining of the digestive tract, and they're not operating properly, and they're peptide hormones, they're made from proteins. That means our body has to take in protein, be able to break down protein, and then to reassemble it, to sew it up, to stitch it together into an amino acid chain that is this peptide hormone. So therein lies a lot of, factors there. They travel via the vagus nerve. They also travel via the bloodstream. So if there are issues in the bloodstream, issues with the vagus nerve, which, let's be very clear, most of us need to upgrade our vagus nerve. The vagus nerve can be impacted by trauma, sleep, like so many different things.
Just so people understand,
Perfect.
Is what communicates from the gut to the brain. So we know there's this huge connection between bacteria, and there's a crosstalk. Just so people understand.
Yeah, they're following with us. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also interestingly, I love Dr. Nawaz Habib's work with, he wrote a book called Upgrade Your Vagus Nerve. It also, the messages travel from the brain to the gut, but also the gut to the brain. And beyond that, the brain. So let's talk about the brain, right? So the brain is where we have receptor sites. The heart is where we have receptor sites. The arteries are where we have receptor sites. The pancreas, possibly the thyroid. When we talk about receptor sites, those are the places where this hormone, when it gets there, it lights up. And that tells it to go, from an action standpoint. So we see that there are challenges and dysfunction in all of these different areas. So if you are someone or someone who is actually having success on a GLP-1 agonist, you've proved my thesis. Their own hormones were working suboptimally, right? Now, the question that I get asked a lot is, what if I'm not obese or what if I'm not diabetic? And now we also know that these medications have been cleared for sleep apnea. If I'm not any of those, then I turn around and I say, well, is there a role for me with this medication, or are there other things that I could be doing to optimize my body's own production of this and the deployment and the reception of this so that I could get to an optimal level? And the answer is absolutely 1,000%. And it requires us assessing our weight health hormones. So Bonni, the thing that I think separates us as compared to maybe other practitioners is we do assessment when somebody comes to us to create a personalized plan for them from a nutrition standpoint. We assess everything, because when it comes to your body's an ecosystem. A lot of doctors are just looking at your digestion, just looking at your cardiovascular health. We're looking at all of it, right? And we're also asking you questions about your lived experience. So, great example. I had a belly as a kid. This is how kind of my path forward on this. And when it wasn't like, oh, she's chubby cute, and then it became like, oh, she's healthy fat, like that was an interesting dynamic. Like, you're a totally healthy person, but you're fat because you have, this belly, and I wasn't obese. And so everything was just diet and exercise. And then I even tried eating disorders, and I felt like really badly about myself that I was a failure at eating disorders because I watched my friends get skinny. Like, that's how messed up this whole, space is.
Oh, yes.
When we hit in there, one of the things that nobody ever said to me was, hey, when you eat, or even like when you eat, do you feel full? And had they said that, could have saved me a lot of trouble, because I never felt full. I would sit there, and I was a girl in a household with two boys, my brothers. So I ate like a boy. Like, I was just like, okay, we just eat. And they had fullness markers, or, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I would have people say to me, Ashley, you should stop when you're full. Great. So stopping when you're full, when you don't know what full means, like, I didn't get a signal, right? Or later on in my life, I would try eating fiber at the beginning so that I felt full, so that then, like all these tricks, right, that you try to do. And I'm like, I still am eating because I'm not getting these messages going off, right? So you and I, we ask our patients about these things. And that's why this is different coming from a dietitian than coming from a doctor. So for me, the big question was, how can we know how healthy our weight hormones are? How can we know their function? And we have to learn to assess that differently.
And what I was going to add in there, and also you and I think, and still many people are out there who I think are victims of this whole idea about calories in, calories out. I grew up in the 80s with, low fat, had PCOS, had no idea, chronic cardio. And I still see people decades later. And so you talk about, eating foods that are satiating and these new medications, and we know, right, and how they all have different impacts. And this is still out there. There's still many people spewing this calories in, calories out thing. And I have never had anyone count a calorie since I've been in practice.
Yes.
It is cuckoo.
Yeah. And we also have, because if we don't know the quality of the calorie and we don't know what the type of calorie is, we don't know if your body's getting what it needs. So if we back up, why does all of this matter? Your body is an operating system, and your body, the goal for your body to live healthfully, and you and I want everybody to live healthfully, because when they are healthy, somebody can go and fulfill their life purpose. Like, we have found our life purpose, which is to help people do that. But when somebody is not healthy, they have to actually spend all their time on this. And we're keeping people away from fulfilling life purposes that we need. Like, I need somebody to cure cancer. And if that person currently is struggling with their weight health, they're not able to be there to open up what they're going to fulfill. So when we think about the body as an operating system, what that means is the body needs to be optimally resourced. Our objective, however you choose to go down this path, is to make sure the body has what it needs, where it needs it, when it needs it, and that it can use it. And the what, where, and when will, yes, depend on what you take in, foods and supplements, and will be impacted by your medications. But it will also depend on can it use it and does it get there? Depends on your digestion, depends on your hydration, depends on detoxification, depends on inflammation. We have to make sure all these things are happening. Otherwise, what calories tends to do, and even meal plans, the eat into this, not that plans, they tend to give a lot of credit for eating salmon and kale. And I'm like, I'm not going to give you credit till that salmon and kale is broken down into nutrients. It gets where it's going to go. And then I have the person that says to me, Ashley, I don't eat salmon. And I'm like, cool. So if you don't eat salmon, here are the other foods we're going to try. And they're like, Ashley, I'm not going to get those in regularly. Okay, cool. Here's what we're going to do from a supplement standpoint. And that's how we personalize your total nutrition plan, right? And I think that what we haven't done is we haven't given people, first of all, my main focus, and the reason I wrote this book and made this assessment available, regardless of if you buy the book, I want to make sure that people are assessing how their experience with food, what some labs are telling us, what their digestive system is telling us, what their hydration system is telling us, what their vagus nerve / breathing is telling us, and what their weight composition is telling us. When we have all of that information together and we understand what's optimal and what's not optimal, we know exactly where to focus. And what's happening for a lot of people, I bet you see this all the time, Bonni, I have people that come in and I'm like, can I just start with, you are doing so many things that are right. They just aren't coming together for you right now because there's one thing that we need to optimize first. There's something that isn't working better.
A blind spot.
Yeah, a blind spot. Yes.
And there's so much misinformation out there.
Yes.
And what I hear frequently is, well, I'm eating healthy and I'm not sure what's going on. And then when they come in, obviously, it's very different. But I think you speak to something, I think, really critical that I just want to repeat, that it's really not just what we're eating, it's what we're actually metabolizing and digesting. And because our digestive systems, as you carefully pointed out, is so compromised, and because our food supply is also deficient in those essential nutrients, or it doesn't supply as much as it used to, decades ago. I think we have set ourselves up for a problem. So it's much more than just the calories. It's what we're getting in that we shouldn't be exposed to, right? Like all the toxins.
Yes.
And what we're missing.
Yeah, our food and our supplements are compromised too, because I often use this statement. They basically have us washing our floor with dirty shoes. So, it's like, oh, there's this amazing protein drink out there, but it's it's giving us a bunch of non-nutritive, maybe even an artificial sweetener. It might be giving us an artificial one. It might be giving us a quote unquote natural one, but we've seen the natural ones do have impact on the microbiome. So maybe a small amount of it's okay, but if your microbiome is not better, maybe a small of it isn't okay. Or maybe we're drinking orange juice that's fortified with calcium, or we've given up dairy and we're going over to almond milk and now it's giving us more calcium. Well, it's throwing off our balance of magnesium and calcium and vitamin D and vitamin K. And that's shifting our bone health, and that's shifting our thyroid health, and that's shifting how our digestive tract moves, it contracts and relaxes. We have to remember this: the body is a system, an operating system. Its primary goal is to stay alive. That's its objective on that part. It is always going to prioritize the things that will keep you alive. Your heart muscle pumping is going to be a priority. You pooping is not going to be a priority. Your body having what it needs to maybe like make your liver muscle or to maybe make a muscle, great. Your hair, not a priority, right? So when we start to see things, all of these are signals. I'm losing hair. I'm noticing I have dry mouth. I'm more bloated or gassy, like any of this stuff that's going on. These are signals of suboptimal function. And the fact that we haven't had a total assessment for this from a weight health standpoint is what has been leading people to calories in, calories out, to dive into supplements, to just be like, I'm going to take more of this one, to measure their success again and again and again on a scale, a total number, and not look at fat and muscle. And by the way, Bonni, I think you can appreciate this. I can definitely appreciate this because especially I was weighed pretty much weekly for my entire life from about age 10 on of my own choosing because it was Weight Watchers and by the way, like I was such a success in so many areas of my life. The fact that I was so unsuccessful in this area made me just like, it was this drive, like, why can't I figure it out? Why can't I figure it out? So the scale and me were like this, like, devil and angel, where if the number went down, I was like, I felt so good about myself and all that stuff. But I learned in college, I got the scale to go down by not eating or only having like gummy candy, like for a little bit. And I got onto the lacrosse field and I passed out. And my coach was like, what did you have? And I was like, so proud of myself. I was like, well, I'm not really eating anything. And I've lost 4 pounds. And he's like, great. He's like, so you're going to be benched until you eat. I can't have you like where you, number one, pass out. And number two, like you're playing much worse. Right. So it was this whole, like, I love like the Alona Mayer, I think is her name, the rugby player, and Kylie Kelsey. And, they're like really taking a hit on this whole, like, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Like, let's stick the middle finger up to that. Like, yeah, I mean, it's like, we're still saying that and it's 26, 25. It's crazy on that part. We have to understand that the body is designed with weight health hormones. When we understand that there are hormones involved in this regulation, just the way we're starting to understand with hormone replacement therapy, if you are a woman without estrogen and progesterone, or you're suboptimal in testosterone, we got to replace that stuff because that really matters for your health, right? If you're a guy without appropriate testosterone, we got to replace that, right? So we're hearing that message. We need to come over and hear the message with weight health hormones. Like, this is the area that, and I really do believe it's led by dietitians. There are some great conversations from physicians who are opening it up, but physicians tend to say these medications can be used safely. Get in more protein. They'll always say more, like you need more protein, and then also make sure that you're strength training. And your comment is, please do not increase your protein if your digestion is currently not able to use your existing protein. We got to fix that first. Otherwise, that's why you're allocating fat, or that's why you have digestive issues, and the quality of your protein matters, and the timing in the day and how much you have at one time. And oh, by the way, like this one is big. I'm wearing green and I've got big curly hair. So hopefully everyone should just remember broccoli. Broccoli, the curly part, it has glucoraphanin and myracinase. These come together in our digestive system and they make sulforaphane. You don't have to remember any of that. You have to remember that if you are intentionally shrinking fat cells, or if you're adding sex hormones, if you're adding testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, etc., when you do this, when they are used up, or when the toxins, when the fat cells shrink and they release toxins, if your body is not optimally resourced, your detoxification system is not going to break those toxins, which include used sex hormones, down, and you increase your risk of disease. So you may be getting skinnier, and you may be at a higher risk of diseases like cancer.
Actually, you speak to a very important point, whether they're on the medications or just doing a fast weight loss program. What people don't realize is that when we store all of our toxins and these hormones in our adipose, in our fat tissue.
Yes.
So there is that concern. People are looking, I lost, 10 pounds in 2 weeks, or some crazy numbers that people have come in. And I'm like, wait, hold on. We really need to support all of these detoxification pathways, your liver, to make sure your bowels are actually moving, which can be another concern, sometimes with these medications. So I feel like we're missing that. And then, I am obsessed for like the last 15, 20 years with body composition testing and trying to get people to toss the scale out. But people are still nuts on the number until they see, oh, I lost fat. Oh, I replaced it. I gained muscle and all of that. We really need to change.
And while people are nuts on the number, I want to also argue, like, I like to put blame where blame is due. We have a lot of blame ourselves because we've taken these things in and we've owned them. However, our government is hugely to blame because calories and BMI are what are used, across the board. It's what's on our food labeling. It's so unhelpful on that part. Our insurance companies will decide who is healthy and who is not, and also who has access, for example, to a GLP-1 agonist based on BMI, and who should just be doing diet and exercise. Blue Cross came out with something and they were like, well, if you're not obese, then, in that space, then it should just be diet and exercise. Are you kidding? Number one, do I need to wait until somebody is obese? And number two, what was considered quote unquote a normal BMI, but certainly at an overweight BMI, we need, there's 93% of the population is metabolically unhealthy. We're talking about metabolic health here. So anyway, we have so many places where we're taught that the number on the scale, forget about the fact that we're also validated based on our appearance, but we're taught about the number on the scale. Bonnie, one of the things I think you did such an incredible job of too, is that it's this is about the desire from how are we, there's so much weight that we need to lose, right? And the weight that we need to lose is all this information, and what I mean? It's all this stuff that isn't right for us. And you're I just don't do any of it. And I think that's what's so helpful. I love it, when I hear your interviews and, from your book, and I feel it's so key to, one of the things I was pointing out in my book is we're all infobese. We are taking in so much information all the time. It's methylene blue, what about this? And do I do this? And all these other things. And you're get rid of that. That stuff is loading us down. And what we really need we need insights about our body, because if we ignore all the information that's out there and we come in and we actually get the insights about our body, either ourselves or in collaboration with a qualified partner, we're going to be able to figure out how to create the most efficient, effective plan. And we just don't need all that other information. And I think that's another piece of this is that you and I have been doing this a really long time. And I don't think I had on my bingo card in 2000, sort of graduating and leaving NYU, going off in that time period, that in 2026, what I was going to have to be doing was teaching people to take in less information about nutrition. I actually want less. I want you to get rid of this information about nutrition, because it's just every day there's something, quote unquote, something new. And it's 97% it's not for
where
you.
is it coming from? Because the people who have the money, and I know you can speak to this a little bit just because of your professional background, it's industry and advertising and obviously the food industry, that they're the ones that are putting out so much of this research and abstracts, headlines that help them. And so you're right. So I feel this is just as bad or worse than maybe the turn of the last century when we had very little information.
It's
just as confusing. And so as soon as someone starts a sentence with me, well, I read, I'm I'll stop right there.
Exactly. Exactly. And we had it before we went live today, you were I read your bio online. I was stop, I'm what is it?
Well,
you know what I mean?
Okay, well, notice I did it before we went live. Notice
yes.
Because you can't, You can't trust anything.
Exactly.
I mean,
And I feel like that's like, and here's what I want to distinguish about like the doctor and the dietitian, because I think you need both. Like doctors are amazing from a diagnostic standpoint, that, and then they're going to refer you over to a dietitian to say, okay, hey, if we want to use this tool, now I want you to work with my dietitian to put together a plan. And I'd like them to fully assess you to make sure, you know, we have a sense of where there might be side effects or there might be challenges and we can really personalize together, right? And I feel like on that part, that's so key because so much of the information coming from doctors today is very prescriptive. It's like, eat this, not that. Some people are like, seed oils will kill you. Don't have dairy, don't have gluten. Or other people are like, make sure it's 1 gram per pound of body weight of protein, or it's 100 grams, or it's these kinds of, and there's just more in there. So what I would say is use your doctor for the diagnosis part, you know, to come in and be like, hey doc, I got to get all this checked out. I want to understand, you know, and on Ashley's assessment, there's the, you know, for my weight health hormones, there are these labs that I want to have drawn, and I want to make sure I understand this information. And now I can personalize a plan, and I want to follow up with you in X amount of time and see how I'm doing on that part. Because another one is I'm seeing with a lot of people who are using GLP-1 agonists, and this is the same thing I dealt with bariatric patients. When you do lose a considerable amount of weight, like we love like the 10% marker, when you lose 10% like in pounds, but hopefully it's mostly coming from fat. So if you weigh 100 pounds and you lose 10 of those, right, you're 90. Every 10%, we should be reevaluating your supplements and your medications, the dosage of them, the need for them, you know, what you're on, what you're taking. And a lot of times people have been on a GLP-1 agonist for a year and have lost like 50 pounds, maybe fat, maybe muscle. And I come in and I'm like, you're still on the dose of your thyroid medication or your statin from when you were 50 pounds heavier. Like, we got to look at that, you know, and like, and how do we, you know, adjust for that? So I think it's a really good idea to have this, you know, I know it's a really good idea, you know, to have this collaboration. What I also recognized, and this is why I put my book together, why I'm doing conversations with people like you, because you are someone who is another resource for people to come to be like, okay, how can I actually do this? But we also included with my book, for anyone who has it, they also have access to a health coach through BNP that can go in and just answer questions. The goal of that is to make sure that you're tracking and you're not jumping into something and saying like, oh, I didn't realize that like not having pooped for 4 days, you know, what was an issue, or, you know, hey, like I'm working at cross purposes. I was trying to meditate in the morning, but somebody also told me to get up and do a HIIT workout. Like, which one is better for me? You know, because we can't do everything all the time on that part. So it's exciting. And I feel like one of the things with our profession, I think that's so interesting is a lot of times there's this perspective that like people always ask me, they're like, why didn't you become a doctor?
Referring to someone again that can get them through this does not just tell people they can't do the heavy lifting. In other words, just because you got this pill that helps with your appetite, and of course it does many other things which you can speak to, Ashley, but besides that, especially for those that are going to be on it just for like a short period of time, to me this is like a fantastic opportunity to get in all of the habits that perhaps because of the hunger hormones and all the other things going on, they were not able to adhere to. So to me, if someone writes that prescription, they should be referring to someone for this part of it.
Yes.
It's a game changer. I mean,
It is. And they should also know that their patients' outcomes are dependent on it. And I've said to doctors, you don't want to get the question, like, you don't want to be the one who's answering all the emails. Like, my team answers like 10 and 15 emails a day from someone, where they have or messages or things. When things aren't going well, there's a question, or when things are going well, there's, and that's a better, that doctors aren't set up for that system. So let's sort of unpack it. There's the doctor that's the direct referral that you're working with, and their office needs to be set up with a system to do this. And if the doctor wants to answer all of that and is trained to answer all that, look, I love, there's some physicians who have also gone on to be dietitians and they're doing this and it's amazing, or, have a nutritionist in their office. The ones where where you're buying it online and you're getting it, in that way, and there's like, they legitimately don't know anything about you and the doctor is signing off on it. Please, if that is you, you need to find the person. And I think what Bonni is saying here is you may actually be better suited to find the person who, like myself and my team, who are going to help you with the implementation and the assessment, because we can go back to any of your doctors at any point and say, hey, can you run this lab? Or, hey, can you check in on this thing? But if you don't do this successfully, you are never going to come off the medication successfully. So let's unpack that for a second. You mentioned something where you said if somebody's only going to use it for a short period of time. And what I kind of want to break up with this idea of like, are you somebody how are you using the medication? Are you on it? Are you off of it? I had somebody who was on this medication for 3 months, did beautifully. We were just really, they had been doing like 6 to 9 months of work. It was like kind of that perimenopausal, like devil time period where their body showed up as something different every day. It really helped. We went on the medication. So the total time on the medication was about 5 months, and then was actually going to have a procedure done. And that was what precipitated being fully off of it. And I said, when they went off of it, I said, hey, let's just recognize how well this worked for you, and let's sort of keep it in our back pocket as a tool. But I think coming off coming out of your surgery and everything else, there's going to be a significant time. They were having a knee replacement done, and there was a lot of recovery. And then there was going to be work time where we had to work on rebuilding muscle and doing all this other stuff. So it felt like the medication, resuming it would be contraindicated. About a year and a half later, they went through the most brutal divorce like ever. And put on, it was like overnight, it was like 35 pounds.
And that's something we didn't mention yet today, but that's a huge topic.
Yes, stress. Totally. And it was their stress. It was their family stress. It was financial stress. It was literally having the house pulled out from underneath them, those kinds of things. So at this point in time, their perspective was that they were a total failure. They didn't even want to reach out to me. Thankfully, I had a really good relationship with the therapist and et cetera. And so the therapist actually was like, so I'm encouraging so-and-so to come back to you. And they said it was okay for me to reach out. Here's what's gone on. And the first comment I said was like, you need help. You need support. Like, let's give you, this tool has been such a great support for you. Let's come back and just use this, right? And so now we're in the process of appropriate weight loss. This person is rebuilding their life, getting off this weight that had come on, like reducing inflammation, optimizing digestion. And like this idea of, are you on it or off of it? But I'll bring you back to the original statement, which is if you are having success on this medication, or if you go on this medication with the intention of having success there, which is why people use the medication, you have to realize it's going to override your own hormones. And so you cannot go off of it without having a plan, like a weaning plan, and a plan to make sure that your body shows you that it is actually going to be fine and it's going to stay in a relative area. So one of the things that makes me the most angry, there are a couple of very well-known physicians who have been public about the fact that either when their patients were on this medication, their patients lost like all of this muscle. Okay, then you don't have a system in place in your office to be actually optimizing somebody on this medication. You shouldn't be scripting it if that's the case, because when I see somebody lose even a pound of muscle, I'm having this conversation about what does that look like? I might be okay with a pound, especially if 1 pound of muscle came with, 5 pounds of fat mass, but I'm going to try to protect the muscles, as best I can. The other one that drives me crazy is if you are out there, and especially if you are a doctor saying this or you're a clinician saying this, that when people go, or if you're the pharmaceutical company, when people go off this medication, they regain all of their weight. Where were you when they regained 5 pounds? There should have been an intervention. Where were you when they regained 8 pounds? Nobody should have lost 50 pounds of weight and then regained 50 pounds of weight on that part, whatever the weight composition was. So we have a flawed system. And what I'm telling you is, even if you don't want to invest the money while you are on the medication to work with someone like myself, and it might be your insurance, and whatever, Bonni, like, to do this, I'm not going to give you a pass, but even if, what I'm going to tell you is, if you are remotely near what you consider your goal weight, forget about, I'd love it to be your goal body composition, but if you were near your goal weight, you absolutely have to work with somebody to figure out what your protocol. I have some people that have been in maintenance now for 2 years, where, once a quarter they're using it, once a month they're using it, once a week they're using it, but at a lower dose, that kind of thing, because the body hasn't shown success. Yeah. Anyway, a rant.
No,
Yes.
I think that is fantastic. But you speak to something. So I have looked up all the numbers, and it is something like 70% without assistance gain back the weight.
Yeah.
But what I would share is that, yes, it might be very common, but it doesn't mean it has to happen. It doesn't have to be normal, because with guidance, it doesn't, and people can even go on, and you maybe could answer this, they could even go on and lose more weight.
Absolutely.
If they really have now adopted again, like I call it, the heavy lifting with the diet, lifestyle, all of those other changes.
Yeah.
To me, this is a tool. I think it can be amazing.
Yeah.
But I hate that people think that they can just take it and do exactly what they were doing before.
Yeah. The other thing I want to acknowledge is that versions of the existing medications of semaglutide and tirzepatide, those versions of medications have existed for quite some time. We have, especially in the diabetes space, we had early on use of these synthetic versions of these hormones, and where they were coming in and doing this. Like, some of them, they just didn't become popular because it was a daily injection. Like, who wants to do that? And the daily injection, not surprisingly, didn't have the same weight loss results as, say, the ones where it was lasting for 7 days. What I also want to acknowledge is, when we get into triple agonists and beyond, and we get into new forms of these medications where they're not agonists they're not looking at peptide hormones, they're turning other things off, or they're turning other things on, or whatever. That's where it's like a buyer beware. We are going to have to look at all these different ways that the medications work. And, a lot of practitioners will be like, oh, this is my favorite because of this. Like, I see this a lot of times with doctors, like, this is my favorite because it does this. Like, the weight loss is faster with this one. Is faster weight loss better for you? I'm not sure. The blood sugar is better with this one. Okay, great. But are you measuring A1C, or are you looking at fasting insulin, fasting glucose, and a continuous glucose monitor? So one of the reasons assessment underneath the hood is so important is that just because a medication can get results doesn't mean that's the medication we want to use. I famously, and it's probably inappropriate, but whatever, sometimes I go there, I always say, like, hey, people lose a lot of weight on chemotherapy. Like, I am not advising chemotherapy as a protocol for people to lose weight, right? So there are plenty of medications that are out there, and we've seen this with statins, we've seen this with COX-2 inhibitors, medications for pain. We've seen where the other effects of them in the ecosystem are not favorable to an individual. And so we're right to pay attention there, and to really focus on that, and look at new medications. On the flip side, do these medications cause blindness? Do these medications cause ocular stroke? Do these there are things that, like, oh, the research says this, or look at what it could do in a rat or a mouse. Like, I'm sorry. Rat and mice might have a lot of similarities with us, but they are never walking down the street and trying to figure out how to not go to Starbucks, or what they're going to get at Safeway, or, like what somebody's serving for them. And they're also not adjusting to, like, how the person on the other line or the person driving just made them feel, like, and their past traumas, right? So there is so much about our eating choices that we can't look at animal research, and we can't always just look at human research in isolation. There's valuable information there. Dr. Ronnie Bonnick shared with me, because I had gone and asked her the question about the ocular stroke. I was like, hey, I saw this. And she said, yeah, Ashley, it's really important that anybody that's on this or is choosing these medications asks their ophthalmologist or optometrist, do they have a small optic nerve? because those were the people that ended up having an ocular stroke. Well, it turns out, and this is like way out of my area, it turns out that not many people have that smaller nerve. I don't know if that's a genetic thing or if that happens with disease. Like, I don't know anything else about that. But hey, that's a smart question. So I went into my eye doctor and I asked, right? I was like over at Target or something. I can't remember where I was, but I was like, hey, while you're looking, like, what's the size of my optic nerve look like? He's like, you've got a great optic nerve. You know, it's like normal, he's like, you're normal. And I said,
I'm going to do this too.
This is helpful, right? And he asked me why I was asking, and he turned around and said, you know what? I'm not even going to ask patients if they're on the medication or not. He's like, I am going to now put in my notes. I am going to tell every patient that comes in, and if somebody has a small optic nerve, I'm just going to mention that they should talk to their doctor if they're considering this type of medication.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you save one person,
right? Yes.
I mean, that is awesome. But you touched on something earlier that I just want to go back to.
Okay. Yeah.
Just about the testing that people may not be familiar with. But I think, like, everything could look normal. People could look like, oh, I'm losing weight. But it speaks to that. Oh, I'm losing weight. Terrific. It's successful medication. But they're not looking at the right measurements. And then you also spoke about, quickly, but I love this diagnostic testing of doing people wearing a constant glucose monitor. I do fasting insulin, your A1C. So I just wanted to mention that, like, if you don't know where to look, everything might look like we're doing great. We're like, everything is fantastic. And you mentioned that, and I just think it's a very important point.
Thank you. The reason my team, they're amazing at Harper One, and I worked with this incredible developmental editor writing my book. And it's always interesting when you are the nutritionist and you're talking about this, but in the space of weight health, everybody has their ideas, right? So I started off this book and I was like, okay, there's a bunch of stuff. I just have to tell people, like, you got to unlearn this. Like, this is that. And ultimately I was like, you guys, like, I curse. I'm like, here we go. So it's SH*T. Like, you got to unlearn this stuff. And I went through, like, if your cholesterol is low, you are not heart healthy. If your A1C is under 5.5, you do not have optimal blood sugar. If if your A1C is pre-diabetic, you may actually not be pre-diabetic, like it listed in that area. And if your A1C is diabetic, we need to understand, even further, what's going on in there, because it could be related to your eating, your insulin, like all these different factors, right? When we look at your blood work and we use certain markers, those markers are the equivalent of the total number on the scale. We have to stop using those. And here's the thing, you and I were in practice before an A1C was available. I love that an A1C is now available. We never had a 90-day average before. We only had, you prick your finger. It's why diabetics had such a hard time before there were continuous glucose monitors. On that part, but the A1C has been hailed as this diagnostic tool, just like the BMI has been hailed as this diagnostic tool, just like total cholesterol, LDL, and HDL have been hailed. And it's not true. What we need to do is we need to get in there and look at the composition of what's going on, within there, and then also understand any impacts that, a medication or a supplement, is going to have on that part. Super, super important. Thanks.
Because the last thing I heard, by the way, Ashley, I don't know if you've heard of this latest research about statins lowering the GLP-1. You heard of this?
So it would make sense to me that your statin medication, and we bundle all statins, but we do know that statins, and then there's this other type of medication like your, Repatha and Leqvio and others. But when we look at the statin class, I do want to note that they do work differently. There are differences in them, but statins as a class, of course, they're going to have impact on the secretion, the formation, and the messaging of your own endogenous weight health hormones, your PYY, your CCK, your GLP-1, and your GIP. Why? Take it away from me, everyone. These are made in the lining of your digestive tract. They're involved in your whole metabolic process. Digestion needs to be optimal. Detoxification, your liver needs to be optimal. And we can't have insult and injury to the lining of the digestive tract. And these medications are ones, and they may also even reduce absorption of key nutrients that are important for vagus nerve function. So we just have to look at it. It does not mean go off your statin. It does not mean go off your proton pump inhibitor. First of all, I am not your dietitian. Bonnie's not your dietitian. We are not here telling you what to do at all on that front.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
But talk to someone about it, and talk to somebody about it who talks about it through this lens. Because if you are on those medications, we need to understand what to do as the counterbalance, and we need to observe that impact and understand it, moving forward on that part, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's definitely complicated, and we need these medications. I was just thinking it's very frequently the same person. The same
Yes.
person
Yes.
who's on a statin, the same person is going to go to their doctor and then ask for the GLP-1 medication.
You know who else is the same person? The same person who, because we are these people. I just want to acknowledge. I'm not like, oh, you people over there, right? I've been this person. I don't know Bonnie's past history, but let's be clear. Like, if the reason that you're not able to strength train is that you have a back injury or a knee injury, or you have pain, or you're a woman who, once a month is hitting it pretty hard with, ibuprofen or Tylenol, or, and we're taking pain medications. Those pain medications impact the lining of our digestive tract, and they, as a result, impact the production, the secretion, the deployment of our weight health hormones. So part of what we have to do is we have to optimize the body's response to pain. And that really requires us to look at inflammation in a different way, and not just look at how are we turning off inflammation, how are we preventing inflammation, but how are we resolving inflammation. So what I did in my book was I wanted to share stories of people, including myself, and how this is actually like how they took their best shot, like how it all came together and what's doing. And none of this is like, oh, life was perfect after that. Like there's no story, on that part. This isn't about like, oh, and then he lost 700 pounds and it was the greatest day of his, whatever. That's not the story. Okay. But there are nuances in here. Like, this was the thing that needed to move. This is how their plan came together. And then I give you the assessment, and then I give you from the assessment how to go in and actually build your plan. And then there are resources online and access, to the coach in that part. Why did I do that? Because what we're talking about is optimization. This never ends. Like, you're always, so Bonnie and I could see you today and we could say, okay, here's our plan to help you build some muscle. I love that you've been hitting it hard at the gym. I'm looking at your protein sources. I think you're doing a great job. I feel like creatine and taurine, which are going to be like you're getting them in, but I feel like we might use that supplementally, as an adjunct here. And I think if we added some magnesium so that your muscles can relax, you can sleep better. And you noted that you're not pooping quite, as well as we'd like you to. So let's go ahead and add that in. That's not us telling you that's your plan and that's going to work. We are now inviting you to experiment and to, start experimenting with that and see how that works for your body on that part, right? So what we want you to do is we want you to come in and experiment with that, and we can start to see how that works for you. And then we're always going to assess the outcome. So how am I going to know if you're actually building muscle? We're either going to use a scale, we're either going to use a measurement around your arm, around your weight, anything that we have access to. We might see if you can lift something, each week. We might see how heavy or how long you can hang, or, any of those things, so that we can actually judge the progress. And this is what we do ongoing. But what can often happen, and this is where I think many people leave a conversation with us, is we will say this is really complicated, right? There's I want you to understand the complexity of the body's ecosystem. But there is always one or two things you can do right now that is going to move you forward. And this is not about you changing everything in your life. And it also isn't about you coming in and giving up everything, because we know, and we always find it. It's how we practice. We come in and we do an assessment. We know you're doing a lot of stuff already better right now. So we just want you to get the advantage. We want you to experience the power of what you're already doing better, so that you can continue to, optimize your body. And you could then go out the door, go to build muscle, do all of that. And then 2 days later, find out you're pregnant. Or what happened to one of my clients was training for an Ironman. And unfortunately, that's the person that injured their knee. It was a whole different plan. So we just have to make sure we're always coming back to your body and what your body needs.
Sure. But you speak to a very important point, which I know you agree with, which is the sustainability.
Yes.
This isn't just preparing for a marathon, a wedding, and all of that kind of thing. It's really, are you able,
has to be doable.
Could you see putting this in your life and eating this, doing that for a reasonable future?
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so fantastic. I feel like I could talk to you for so much longer.
Same.
So I'm going to put a link everywhere for people to take. So it's a free assessment.
Free assessment. Yeah. At the Better
Free
Nutrition
assessment
Program.
and
I put it over
resources.
there. free for you. Yes,
And
exactly.
all your social media, which I follow you all the time on
Thank you.
LinkedIn, and you always have great information out there.
Thank you.
And I mean, and like I told you before, I already pre-ordered your book, and I can't
Thank you.
wait.
Thanks. Yes. And you get, along with everybody else from a pre-order, you get access to every month. I'm doing live webinars on this. So for people who want to get started, there's no reason to wait till January. And then also in January, for anyone who's both pre-order or who buys the book in January, we have a jump start on the 12th of January. So 30 days where we can all do this together. And you didn't know this, Bonnie, but I was going to hit you up because I'd love to have you speak in there too. So we'll get, have everyone.
Fantastic.
I want everyone to meet my heroes, sheroes. And, this is a game on. We are all here to change the trajectory of weight health. And that means we're all needed, to be able to do this together.
I agree. Well,
Yay.
I'm with you. Well, thank you, and
Thank
bravo
you.
for all everything you do. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.